So we just announced Jumpstart Agora. I'm excited to kick off this video series. Let's talk all things deployment and architecture. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, Leo's here with another Jumpstart Lightning episode, but not just yet another Jumpstart Lightning episode. We are here to talk about Jumpstart Agora that we just launched. And to do that, kicking things off with my friend Dale. Dale, how are you doing?
Great. It's great to be back on the show. Really excited to be talking about Jumpstart Agora.
The last time that you were here, we talked about HCI Box. It was when we announced HCI Box. And yet again, I'm happy that you're here to talk to me about another new thing that we just announced, Jumpstart Agora. Before we dive into all the bells and whistles, Dale, who you are, what is it that you do?
Yeah, well, I'm a partner solutions architect in the global partner org at Microsoft. And I'm also one of the core maintainers for the Jumpstart project. And it's really been my pleasure to work with the awesome team behind Jumpstart Agora, which can't wait to show everyone today.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that it's been more than 3.5 years since we started this this crazy ride. So Dale, Jumpstart Agora, right? This is kind of a new thing. It's a new approach. There's a lot of exciting stuff that we worked on, and we're really excited to kick off this video series. So to get us going, Dale, talk to me for a second about the motivation of creating this Jumpstart Agora.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that Jumpstart, the Azure Arc Jumpstart has always been about is giving folks, either bite-sized snippets of code and examples and screenshots that really show how to use Azure Arc for a specific scenario, or giving users a complete sandbox to explore Azure Arc technology in kind of a real-world type of example, but without having to have physical or multi-cloud infrastructure in the case of ArcBox or HCI Box. And one of the things that we wanted to really take to the next level with our next big release with Agora was really taking an industry approach or an industry lens and applying that to the same principles that we've always had in Jumpstart. So in other words, how can users really quickly explore Azure Hybrid Edge capabilities, whether that's Arc or related technologies like AKS Edge Essentials, through an industry perspective, like retail or industry or manufacturing or finance, for example.
Yeah. And Dell, to do that, we wanted to think about a catchy name. That was the first thing, right? I mean, you need to have a catchy name. So we came up with Agora, and Agora was really kind of finding this notion of, okay, what is it that we want to represent? And Agora really fits in because it comes from the Greek word agora, and it really represents some sort of a marketplace where people are coming and just kind of exchanging merchant and ideas and all that. And honestly, it was just a good fit because we wanted to create this marketplace of industry scenarios. Obviously, we're here to talk about Contoso Supermarket, the first scenario, but that was kind of the idea behind Agora. So I'm excited to kick us off.
Yeah. Like you said, our first industry scenario is in a retail focused scenario. We call it Contoso Supermarket, and it's really just jam packed with features. If you want to just take a look at what's actually in the architecture, I'd love to show everyone kind of what we've got in here. So when you deploy Jumpstart Agora Contoso Supermarket, you're going to get a complete experience. And if you've used things like ArcBox or HCI Box before, you're used to kind of an all-in-one package solution that deploys everything, configures everything with really just a very simple deployment process. With Contoso Supermarket, you can see we get a lot of goodies in it. We've got a point-of-sale system. We got things like IoT integration with freezer monitoring for food safety that's integrating with things like IoT Hub and Azure Data Explorer. We've got a manager view of the point of sale system that has some really awesome features like checkout queue monitoring and things like that with cameras and that kind of thing. And of course, it's all backed by a really robust set of infrastructure based on AKS Edge Essentials that really kind of brings a complete experience for users from developer to operations, all the way in between.
And Dale, you mentioned this at the beginning, which is kind of like this is the evolution. And if you've been following the Jumpstart for a while, you know that we were always kind of having this technical lens, right? But if you look at the breadth of what Dale, what you're showing here on the table, you can see that we're expanding. I mean, this umbrella of Azure Arc is getting bigger and bigger, and us as a Jumpstart team, we're also getting bigger in terms of not just the team, which has more people now, but also the amount of things and the directions that we wanna take. So that table right here, and especially the right column here, if you look at all the products that we are covering as part of these solutions, it's kind of amazing to see.
Yeah, it's really been a lot of fun to build as well. And I'd love to kind of show people like exactly what it looks like to deploy one of these things. But first, let's take a little bit closer look at the architecture. We saw on the table there all the different pieces and components. Lear, you just mentioned, we're expanding pretty far beyond just Azure Arc at this point. But when we deploy Contoso Supermarket with Jumpstart Agora, it's like I mentioned, it's a very similar experience if you've used ArcBox or HCI Box before. So you run a deployment that's going to automatically, from templates, stand up all the infrastructure, including simulating in-store Kubernetes clusters with AKS Edge Essentials. It's going to wire those up to the Azure control plane with Azure Arc. It's going to automatically configure things like Prometheus and Grafana for observability. It's going to wire up basically simulated IoT sensors for freezer monitoring, cameras for checkout queue detection, and things like that. And of course, it's all tied together with Azure Automation, with Microsoft Defender for security, to really provide a kind of complete, true to life experience for how real world users can use our technology to build an industry scenario on the edge with Azure.
Yeah, and Dale, I think it will be fair to say that this is by far our biggest investment when it comes to the reach. It's not just about building the automations, but it's also about trying to think how a specific industry scenario will look like. And obviously, we can't cover everything, and we're going to continue to add new features and all that. But this is really stand out to me. Like you mentioned, we're reaching far beyond just the Azure Arc product line. And that tells a lot. I mean, this industry thing is a critical thing to emphasize here.
That's right. So let's take a look now at just the deployment flow. And I'm going to show you this in real time in just a second. But again, it's super similar to other products you may have used within our Azure Arc Jumpstart before. The first step is to obviously deploy the infrastructure. And to do that, you can use traditional methods like just Azure CLI, but we've also introduced a new capability that's new to Jumpstart where we're using the Azure Developer CLI. And I personally really love using AZD. That's Azure Developer CLI is also known as AZD. It really makes things super smooth. It reduces friction for our users in terms of setting up prerequisites and things like that. And it's just a really nice experience. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen that yet. But at any rate, with a one deploy command, we can stand up the infrastructure. That's going to go ahead and kick off the Azure deployment that sets up all the resources. That includes standing up our AKS Edge Essentials clusters in a simulated kind of fashion. So we're kind of simulating the edge infrastructure that would happen in a real retail store. And then we're also configuring other Azure resources like Cosmos DB, like IoT Hub, and a number of other things. And then once that infrastructure has been deployed, the next step is simply to log into the client VM. Once we do that, that kicks off the bootstrapping scripts and the automation scripts that configure the rest of the infrastructure. So it's really just a two-step process, really easy. I'd really like to show to people, is that something we can do now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go ahead and let's flip over to a console window. And I'll actually want to show you the AZD experience. So what you see here is I've got the Azure Arc Jumpstart repository cloned down to my machine. We'll just take a look at what's in that folder right here. I'm in the Jumpstart AG folder. This is where the Agora artifacts live. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run AZD init. And what that's going to do is it's going to initialize a new environment for me to actually use with AZD. We can just go ahead and use the default name there. And then I'm going to run another command, AZD up. And this is really where the magic of AZD really makes things awesome. So it's going to automatically give me a pick list to select what subscription I want to deploy to. Less friction for my users to have to kind of think about subscriptions and things like that. It's going to let me pick which region I want to deploy to. And it's going to do a number of other neat things, like it's going to automatically check that we have the available capacity in a given region to deploy Agora, because Agora does take some CPU cores. And this is just an amazing capability because we've had friction before where users needed capacity, but they didn't have it. But that's all now built into the automation as part of the Agora experience. It's also going to prompt us, as you see here, for some of the parameters that we're going to need to pass in. Things like the username, the remote desktop port, if we wanted to change that. There is also an aspect of providing a GitHub username, because part of this Agora experience includes a fully automated CI/CD pipeline. And so GitHub is very much part of the process. I'm just going to put a dummy value in for the personal access token here. Creating the SSH key, another potential pain point if users aren't familiar with generating SSH keys. That's all automatically done by AZD. So this really just makes things super smooth for users. again, it's just really, I think, just a real big benefit to how users experience Jumpstart. So that's
Yeah.
going to kick off. That's going to start deploying, and then once that's finished, we'll go to the next step, which is to go ahead and log into the client VM. Let me go ahead and switch over to a completed view, and so you can see here. This is one of the deployments that I've already run previously, just to kind of give
Mhm.
us an example during the session today. And you can see that we've deployed everything, um, and we're ready now to go ahead and make the next step, which is logging into the client VM. It looks like it took about, if I look down here, it took 12 minutes, 51 seconds. So it doesn't take a long time to actually deploy the Agora infrastructure as that
Mhm.
first step. And then as
Yeah.
the next step, it's as simple as logging into the client VM. And another nice thing about AZD is we're just going to output the command you need. So I can literally just copy paste this command to use remote desktop to remote into the correct public IP and port on my client machine. So
Yeah.
that's really all it takes to deploy Agora, a super simple experience.
And Dale, I mean, you and I obviously we had a lot of conversation around the AZD, and it will be fair to say it was kind of like the dark horse of Agora. I mean, we when we started developing this thing, AZD was not even in the picture. But as we kind of continued to developing, and this thing took about 8 months to develop end to end, the Agora architecture and the framework and all that, AZD became more mature, and we partner with with internal teams with dev or dev tools to work with them together on this. And what I like about AZD here is the fact that you mentioned the pain points, right? And when we were having conversations throughout the years, how a CLI experience for the Jumpstart will look like, that was kind of it. And before we went and kind of developed our own CLI, there came AZD team and showed us that this is possible with what they're doing. And the pre-provision scripts are really, the way I'm looking at this is the real magic of AZD. That prerequisite framework. That's just awesome.
Yeah, and I think we love it. That's for sure. And I think
Yeah.
we'll definitely start to see more and more jumpstart scenarios and products start to use it. And you're already
Definitely.
starting to see some of that. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and take a look at a complete deployment now. So I'm going to switch over now to Azure Portal. This is an environment that I've already completely deployed, logged into the VM. All the automation scripts have been run. We'll start inside Azure Portal. And we can see just all the different artifacts that get deployed as part of the Contoso supermarket experience. So you see we've got things like a container registry. There's a data collection rule for Azure Monitor. There's our 3 Azure Arc-enabled Kubernetes clusters. These, again, are AKS Edge Essentials running on Windows 11 machines that are simulated as part of the Jumpstart experience. These have been Arc-enabled, and they represent in-store clusters. So we have a Chicago store, a Seattle store, and of course we have a dev cluster for the developers to use and iterate against before they push code out to Chicago and Seattle. We also have a cluster in Azure itself, an AKS cluster that we're using as a staging cluster. So we're not just showing, this isn't just a demo to show, for example, how AKS Edge Essentials work. This really, the Contoso Supermarket experience really shows a complete CI/CD experience for how developers would develop and iterate and operate an edge solution using our technology. So you see also the hosts themselves. So these represent the Windows machines that are hosting the AKS Edge Essentials infrastructure inside the actual stores. And again, all this is deployed as part of AZD. One of the other things we can do is we can remote into our client VM, and I'll switch over to the RDP window here, and we can see what we get inside the client VM and actually see things like the applications and things like that. So I'll go ahead and I'll open up Edge here. One of the other things I really love about Agora is just how easy we're making it to find things, right? Just again, it's all about reducing user friction. So if I open up the favorites bar, we are pre-populating all the internal IPs you'll need to reach the different point of sale systems. So I'll go ahead and open up the point of sale system for Chicago here. This is showing the actual application deployed on the Chicago cluster. And it's a fully working application. It's a sample, right? It's a way that users can quickly see how would an application work inside AKS Edge Essentials and inside our Azure hybrid experience. But we've also got things like a manager view, and that's where we can see things like the checkout queue monitoring, which is using some really cool technology like the OpenVino integration for showing the cameras and that are doing human detection on the number of people on screen and things like that. Really neat integration to kind of showcase how things like AKS Edge Essentials and IoT Hub, and of course, open source technologies and things like that can work together to kind of deliver this complete retail experience. We also have, of course, infrastructure monitoring and application monitoring with Grafana. So if I go ahead and open up Grafana here, I can do things like see how our freezers are performing. So this is using IoT sensors and IoT Hub to ingest data, and we're showcasing that data and pushing that through dashboards like this Grafana dashboard. We also have dashboards that show things like the performance of the actual infrastructure in terms of resource utilization and things like that. So lots and lots of goodies all packed in into the Agora experience here.
Yeah, definitely a comprehensive environment. Dale, thank you for that demo. And as part of that video series, we're going to show a lot of things in more depth when it comes to all the integrations and all the scenarios that you shared at the table at the beginning. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to watch those next episode as part of this video series. Dale, final thoughts on Agora and where we are headed with this before we're wrapping things up?
Yeah, well, first of all, we've shown this to a few select customers and partners already. The feedback has just been outstanding. I really can't wait to be showing this to more and more folks out there. Can't wait to get feedback from the community. We're already starting to see some of that come in. That's really exciting. That really energizes us. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm looking forward now to the next industry scenarios that we add into the Agora marketplace so that we can continue to expand this. But so far, so good. This has been a really great experience.
Definitely. Thank you, Del, for joining me here today. And like I mentioned, if you want to see the next episodes, make sure to subscribe. And while you're out there, just hit the like button and give us an engagement. And why not promoting the channel while you're at it? And also let us know in the comments below. Is this something that you think you're going to use? Any questions? Any features that you think, if you already used Agora, any features that you think that we might miss and you want to give us some feedback? So again, Del, thank you so much for being here with me. And I'm looking forward to see all of you in the next one. Bye, everyone.